Hey guys, it's Bonnie again from Archer and Olive. Today I'm going to be painting with gouache. I thought it would be fun every month to have a little challenge with these monthly gouache videos. I'd like for you guys to post your work that was inspired by my creations on Instagram. You can use the hashtag that I am putting in the comments below and tag us. So probably about a week after the video posts, I will select a winner and send them an Archer and Olive sketchbook. I'll also be showcasing some of my favorites on our Instagram stories. So with that being said, let's go ahead and go on over to my desktop and get started. Hey guys, I am really excited to share my first ever gouache video with you. I know a lot of you have been asking for some tips and tricks, so I'm going to go over just the very basics. So when mixing colors, it's important to add just a tiny amount of that darker color into your white. It is really easy to make a color darker, but you're going to waste a ton of white paint trying to make it lighter again. Then once you have a color you like, turn to an unused page in your sketchbook and test out that color first, because it is always going to look different on a dried piece of paper than it does on your palette. If the color looks good to you, you can begin your painting. It might seem like a good idea to load your brush up with paint, but I recommend getting just a small amount on the tip of your brush. Now, as you can see, I'm constantly going back and forth between the paint, the water, and that paper towel. The paper towel is a really good tool for blotting off all the excess water. So I'll mix and mix until I find the perfect consistency. Unlike watercolor, you want to make sure that once the gouache is on the page, it stays in the spot that you've placed it. There's no bleeding or blending into the other colors. Now to get those finer details, you want to use the very tip of your brush, but don't press too hard because you don't want to damage the bristles. And speaking of brushes, currently I am using a Winsor & Newton University Series size 0 brush. I'll put a link to the brush in the comments below. The type of paper you're using is also going to matter. I prefer really smooth pages like our Archer and Olive sketchbooks have. The pages are just super smooth and they have just the slightest of tooth, and it just makes that paint just really glide onto your page. If you're working with a watercolor paper, you're going to have too much rough texture and you're not going to get those crisp edges. So when you're creating thicker lines, much like with the Funosuke calligraphy pen, I recommend painting with the side of your paintbrush. Then with kind of one smooth motion, apply your paint to the palette. As you can see, even a small amount of paint on the brush is going to go a long way. But don't worry if you put your brush to the paper and discover that you've picked up too little. You can always go back to the palette and grab more. To avoid having to keep rinsing off the brush too much, I like to paint everything in the same color at once. So right now I'm working with that lighter shade of blue, so I'll be painting all the leaves I want in that lighter blue first. Your gouache is going to dry pretty fast, but do be careful where you're resting your hand because you could place it in a wet spot and then smudge your paint all over your piece. It is totally frustrating when that happens, and it has definitely happened to me a couple times. Even if you're working with one color, you do want to remember to occasionally go back to your water and give the brush a good rinse, because the gouache has a tendency to kind of build up in the bristles and you're going to lose that finer edge if you have too much paint in there. So clean off your brush every once in a while to avoid that paint buildup. Another thing to note is that the gouache on your palette's also going to tend to dry pretty quickly, but don't worry because you can just easily reactivate it by adding more water. That's probably one of my favorite things about gouache. It just makes it really easy to save your mixed colors right there on the palette. Because you know, sometimes when you sit down to paint, you're not always going to be able to finish your painting in one sitting. So ideally when you're putting paint on the paper, you should be able to get a good flow that doesn't look too streaky. But if you're getting a rough edge with your gouache, you might just need to add a bit more water. And then on the other hand, if you're seeing too much paper or color underneath, you're probably adding too much water. That's going to be all for my tutorial, but if you're interested in learning more, I am going to be launching a gouache course this spring, which I am so excited about. We're going to go really in depth about all kinds of things, and you're going to come out learning how to paint dainty florals just like these. It's an online course, so keep your eyes out for that. I'll be making an announcement on my Instagram. And then don't forget about our contest. Share your gouache paintings that are inspired by this tutorial for your chance to win an Archer and Olive sketchbook. Just post your picture on Instagram with the hashtag listed in the comments below. Thanks for watching, guys. As always, if you like the videos, make sure to hit that subscribe button because I have a ton more awesome tutorials coming your way. Have a great week, and I will see you next time.